Hey there, and welcome to another Curtis Stage tutorial. Today's tutorial is in Photoshop, and we're going to be doing an advanced brush tutorial doing gradients. Gradient brush, it's a really cool technique. We're also going to be making a poster. We're just going to use this gradient brush to create a rock poster, so we're going to do a little poster layout. So let's get started with this tutorial. All right, so we're going to make something that looks something like this. You can see my layers stack here as it made a David Bowie poster. We're going to be creating multiple layers, multiple brushes that are going to happen in here. And we're going to need a couple assets. We're going to need a photo of David Bowie, which I have for you. And then we're going to need a galaxy background, which I also have for you. So those are in your assets folder. You're going to want to download those and have those ready to go. So let's open up a new document. So I'm going to go to File, New, and create a new document that's 1500 wide by 1200 high, 300 resolution. I've got RGB color going on here, and let's create a black background. So when to get a black background, right, custom contents, we're going to click there and pick black. All right, let's click create. Once we've got this going, we want to bring in our assets just to have those ready. So I've got a couple of those. I've got a galaxy picture. I'm going to open that up in Photoshop. I'm not going to drag it right into Photoshop from the desktop. I'm going to open it up in Photoshop and then drag it from there, so it's not a smart object. So I have this galaxy open. I'm going to then get my move tool and drag this onto the tab and let go. It's pretty small, don't worry about that. This is going to be kind of soft and out of focus in the background. So we have that there, and then let's bring in the David Bowie picture. Of course, when you do this on your own, you may use a different person. So I'm going to bring in David Bowie, and I'm going to do the same technique. I could go up to Window, Arrange, and 2 up, right? But I've got a bunch of tabs open, so I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to click the David Bowie and bring it right into my untitled one. Now I want to save this before I go any further, because if we do all this work and then this crashes, it's not going to be very, very exciting for you. So I'm going to call this demo and then gradient brush poster. I'm going to be throwing a lot into this tutorial. It's not just about gradient brushes, but make sure it's a Photoshop format. It's layers. Click save. There we go. Now we've got it saved. We've got that going. Now, before I do anything else, I want to get rid of this background on David Bowie. Best way to do that is to create a mask. So I'm going to go down to the bottom, click the mask icon, add a mask. White, of course, reveals everything to the left, so I want to use my paintbrush, and I'm going to paint out black. Paint with black. I'm going to use a hard round, kind of get maybe some big areas really quick with a big brush, and then I'll get in a little tighter and get around. I could also make a selection. This is pretty easy. I could have made a selection and made a mask out of that selection, but I could also just do this as well. I could go in and make my brush smaller now. Since we're going to be using a lot of brushes today, I figured we could just do it this way, and it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but so however you want to do it. If you want to make a selection around David, you could do that. I'm going to just kind of do it this way and go real quick. Using my black. It looks like I'm erasing, but of course I'm not. I'm non-destructively editing with a mask, which I think is probably the most important feature of Photoshop. Let me zoom in here. So Command plus, space bar moves me around, get my brush a little smaller, and get in here pretty tight around these things. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not going to have a realistic David Bowie in the end anyway. I don't want it to look chunky though, so just make sure that you've kind of got it fairly cleaned up around the hair here. Maybe a little bit of his head. It's a mask, so of course if I wanted to paint with white to bring back any, I could, right? So X on your keyboard will switch you between black and white. And get down a little closer here. And we're going to end up modifying Bowie quite a bit as we move forward. but not just yet. We'll be doing that more towards the end. So right now I'm just cleaning them up so we can kind of place them where we want them to go, and then we'll add kind of our effects that we have going later. All right, so something like that looks pretty good. All right, so it's just gonna be kind of, you know, here, and then I'm gonna go with my move tool. I'm gonna increase the size, and I'm gonna turn this, I'm gonna rotate it. So Command T, I'm gonna rotate the galaxy. If I hold Shift down when I rotate, it'll lock to that 90-degree angle. And then I'm gonna make this bigger. I don't want to distort it any, so I'm just gonna make it bigger and kind of position it something like that. It's pretty cool. Nice. Hit the check mark or return or enter on your keyboard and apply both those. Now, I don't need these two on. I'm gonna lock both these layers for right now and turn them off because we gotta make some brushes now, and then we'll get those back on in a few minutes. So what I want to do is I want to just have a plain black background. It's pretty important for our next step. So let's make a new layer, and the background's black. I have a new transparent layer. What I want to do is I want to go to my regular paintbrush, back there. I want to pick a couple bright colors. So what we're going to do is regular paintbrush. We're going to go to a soft round, general brushes. So right when I open up this brush options panel right here, right, I want to go to general brushes and I want to pick soft round. That's really good. You could do soft round opacity pressure, but that's only if you have a Wacom tablet. So I'm just going to pick this one right here. It doesn't matter what size or angle at this point. We're just going to close that back down. We're going to make this a lot bigger. The brush is going to be bigger, and I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut of the bracket tool to make that bigger. Now the goal here is to make an amorphous kind of color field that's going to be not only behind David Bowie and in front of him at the end, but it's also going to help us with our most important part of this in making our gradient brush, which is our next step. So what I want to do is I want to have pick a few really bright colors, and I'm just going to kind of create these kind of light globules, I call them. So I'm just going to kind of single click. There's a couple clicks for green. Now I'm going to go and make a yellow. I'm going to have this towards the bottom, kind of do that. Then I'm going to have like kind of I'm going to go here and pick like a light blue, kind of have that up here, something like that. And then maybe a magenta. So I'm going to go and pick a magenta color, something pretty pink, and make my brush a little bigger and maybe something like that. So I'm going to just have this kind of cool, soft, cloudy light thing. Okay, it looks like some sort of emanating light, and that's going to be good for the next step that we're going to do, but also is going to be part of our background. We're going to blur this in a minute quite a bit, but before we do that, I want to load up our, well, we could blur it now actually. Let's go up to filter and blur, and let's go to Gaussian blur, and when that dialog box comes up, I'm going to kick this up quite up here, maybe like 100 pixels, somewhere around that range. You could type it in if you want. You could use the slider, hit return if you type it in, and then it's going to apply that. So I just wanted to blur that a little bit more to even soften that background more. We're going to use this and blend mode it and stuff. It's going to be pretty cool. We're not there yet. Now what I want to do is, because we're going to make these, I want to show you these things. I'm going to turn off all my layers here except for there's the one I made in my other previous one. Just want to turn on these, I call them gradient space worms. We're going to make these now. But to make these, we needed that background to create them, right? So gradient space worms. All right, that's what we're going to make. So we're going to use these colors to create that. Of course, you could make different ones later. It's fun to really, this is, trust me, you're going to dig this, and it's going to be super fun to play around with. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the bottom. We're going to look for the mixer brush. For me, my toolbar has those down in the three lines at the very bottom, right above my color palette here. There's three little dots, and then I go and find the mixer brush right here, mixer brush tool. If I edit my toolbar, it might be back on the regular toolbar set. So you might see the mixer brush underneath your paintbrush. That could be there too. So you could hold your mouse down and it could be in there. So It could be there, or it could be in these three little dots. It just depends on how your toolbar is set up. So I have mine set up so it's in these three little dots right here, and I'm gonna click that. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick our brush type, and the brush type is gonna be a hard round. Okay, that's all fine. We're gonna do anything there. Size doesn't matter yet at this point. Probably about this size, 250, 300. Now right here you're gonna see a couple options up here. The first option is gonna be, you're gonna see your foreground color of the last color that you used right up here. We don't want that. We actually wanna click this little arrow down button, and we wanna say clean brush. See how it's transparent now? We don't want any color in that. We're gonna leave this right here, load brush after each stroke. We're not gonna be really doing strokes, so it doesn't matter. Now, the kind of brush that we want, so this is one, so we're basically gonna make the trick to this is we're making a brush with inside a brush, and that's how this trick even works. It's really cool. So we're gonna pick, out of all these options here, dry heavy load. So gonna be dry heavy load, wet 0%. I don't want it mixing too much. And then the load is 100%, the flow is 100%. So all that should look like this right here on the toolbar. So dry heavy load, 0, 100, 100. Make sure yours says that. Now, once you have that, the trick here, this is pretty cool. I'm gonna expand my brush, maybe about that big, so I can get all four of those colors. I'm gonna expand my brush about that big. Gotta clear that brush again. If you see color go back in there, definitely clear it. You want it to be transparent. Now, I made my brush bigger, like I said. I click Option, and I get a target, almost like we're using the healing brush tool or the clone stamp. We're picking up paint right now. This is the trick with this. It's really cool. Once I do that, look at my brush right now. See this? Now it's got this rainbow gradient thing going on. Now make your brush a little smaller. Now we're just gonna paint a couple random things right now, but just to get the hang of this, and then you're gonna, Command Z. You're gonna make a new layer. Let's make a new layer. Don't wanna paint these space worms on the same layer as your gradient background. And now I want you to, oh yeah. Look at that. Fool around with that a little bit. Have fun there, right? So you can see the direction that I kind of painted in, because my idea here, again, like I said in the last poster design that we talked about with the LAFC posters, you always want to have a game plan going into whatever you're creating. My game plan is going to be, I'm going to drop David Bowie in between those two paint strokes, those two space worms. I want the near space worm to cover David Bowie's body, and I want the far space worm to be behind him. So I had kind of a game plan going in, right? So these brush strokes that I made are kind of what I want. Fool around for a minute until you get something you like. But my suggestion is make something that's similar to this, where you're starting up here, create one that kind of does this, then start in this corner and create one that kind of does that, right? Because then we can kind of have the words David Bowie inside these as well, a little bit, possibly. So think about how that could work. And you can always change them out if you don't like them. Once you do that, let's move on to the next step. But aren't those rad? Look at how cool they look. They're all dimensional. They're very 3D. We're not using a 3D brush or anything. It's just that gradient with a mixer brush is mixing the colors really smoothly. So it makes this happen. So that's why I call them space worms. They're really awesome. All right, now let's make this start to happen. Let's turn on David Bowie. So I'm going to sandwich David Bowie. I'm going to put him in between the two space worms, get my move tool, move him around. Oh, actually, I see what I did wrong here. I made my bottom space worm. I'm going to redo those. I'll turn it off. I made my bottom one on the same layer as the top one. They got to be on separate layers. So any space worms that you do, they have to be on separate layers. So let me lock this gradient into place like that. Let me lock that there. Let me unlock David. No, yeah, let me unlock David Bowie, move him up to here, wherever you kind of think you like. Something like this. I'm putting them right there. I'm going to make 2 layers just so I don't forget this time. Notice how I just turned the eyeball off on that because I really like that one. So if I can't get another one just like it, Maybe I'll cut those out and try to figure it out. All right, let me go back to my mixer brush. So there I am. I still got just glance up here. You should still have this. All right, so the first one I'm gonna make is gonna be behind David Bowie. So it's gonna look like it's going in front of him first. I'm gonna start here and kind of, you gotta make that sound. Okay, that's cool. So I'm gonna now bring Bowie up above. So that's right, this space worm is leading to David Bowie. Now I'm gonna make a layer above David Bowie and put the space worm that's gonna be down the bottom. Obviously I want to cover up the lower part of this image here. So my goal is just to kind of create a worm that does that. So maybe it's, something like that. That looks kind of cool. Every time I do this, I do it a little differently. It's always fun to kind of come up with something different every time. So I dig this one. This looks good. So get that, and then let's go back to the David Bowie layer here. Oh, let's turn on our galaxy, and it looks cool like this, but I want to experiment with some blend modes. So let's bring the galaxy above our gradient and see what this does. So I'm gonna put the galaxy above the gradient. I unlock both those to do that. I'm gonna go to my blend modes and see what kind of looks good here. So clearly when you're up in this area, you're knocking out the lights and you're darkened. When you're here, you're knocking out the darks. And when you're here, you're knocking out 50%. I personally like soft light on this one, but you could, kind of go crazy with this. You can go to pin light, which is kind of funky and cool. Hard mix is kind of rad. Maybe a little too graphic for what we're doing. Difference is too much, I think, right? Subtract is kind of cool. It's kind of moody. It brings the gradient that we did inside the star cluster. Divide is out of control. Now, divide wouldn't be bad if we knock down the opacity. Look at this. I'm going to knock down this opacity on divide. And I could even bring the opacity down on this too. Just make it not so bright back there. So I could bring that down on that gradient back there. I could bring it down to like 60%. That could work. So I've got the opacity at like 30% on the galaxy and 60%, 55% on the kind of light glow. That's all great. Really good. All right, let's do some blend modes on David Bowie now. Let's make him look cooler. I'm gonna move this down. It's bugging me. It was a little too high. Move that down. I gotta see a little bit more of his body. It was kind of cut off up here. I want to get a little bit of his chest in there. Something like that's pretty sweet. Oh, I got multiple worms on. Okay, I see what's going on there. That's kind of cool. That's fine. Maybe I could have those on. It's kind of nice like that. All right. So there we go. So I've got my, I'm gonna now go on here and create some blend modes here. So one of the things that I wanna do, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let me turn this back on, all these things. So see, I've got some multiple blend modes. So what I did was, I have multiple layers. You can see I have masks here. So multiple layers of David Bowie. And I colorized on this too. So I changed the kind of color by putting a gradient fill. So let's do that. Let's put a gradient fill over the top and see how that works. So I know what I'm gonna do too. Let's make a duplicate copy, Command J, and let's blur the bottom one, right? So with Command J, top one, top Bowie. Now let's blur the bottom one. I did this in the Carlos Vela one. It's really cool. I want, this is spacey, so I want it to have a blur to it. Kind of one of my go-tos. So I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, and we used it, Motion Blur. I'm going to take that, and then you can decide how much distance you want. I'm going to kind of have it kind of off a little bit, maybe on both sides. You can pick an angle if you want, something like that. That's cool. So I got a little blur here, and I can even move this bottom one. Let me lock the top layer so I'm not accidentally moving that one. And look at how I can move it off a little bit. We did that with the Carlos Vela one. I like it kind of off. You can put it on this side, but I think on this side for this composition is a little bit better. So it looks like he's blurring out this way. It's pretty sweet. Gives him some movement. You could go up or down, but it's kind of up to you. Up is kind of weird. I feel like I'd have to do something with this area right there. So I'm just going to go off to the side like this and have that blur like that. All right, cool. Now I can do blend modes on this top layer. It's going to blend with the bottom. So watch this. I'm going to click on the layer that I have locked. I'll lock the bottom one now, the blurred layer, and I can name this Blurred Bowie. That would be good. And then this top layer, I can blend mode this. So I can go in here, look at these. So now, oh, that one's nice with lighten like that. Let's try that one out just for a second, see what that looks like. So I'm gonna have lighten as a blend mode on that. Then I'm gonna add a gradient layer over the top of this. And I'm gonna clip it to this. So I'm gonna go down to the bottom, I'm gonna go to a gradient. Okay, I like this purple color, it matches. So let me go to my gradients, and I've got some blues. Let's see what the blues look like, right? But I wanna, let's see, maybe something like that. No, maybe something, This is kind of up to you. Purples, oh, I'm gonna go purple. Yeah. Okay, now we're not gonna see anything until we do this here. So I'm gonna do a radial gradient from the center out. So I switched the style to radial. We used a linear gradient with the Carlos Vela poster, with the LAFC poster, if you did that one with me, which hopefully you did. I'm gonna go with a radial style, so it's emanating out from David Bowie. I'm gonna click OK. Then I'm gonna clip this to this layer. So to clip mask this to it, I'm gonna Option click. And now it's clipped just to that layer below. Look at that. One if I want. That looks cool. I don't mind this like this. And again, I could do a blend mode on this bottom one. That's, you know, a little different too. Look at that. Color dodge in there. Or something like that. Linear dodge, it looks all ghosty. But I still want people to know it's David Bowie. So I'm not gonna do that. And I'm also not gonna, on this one, I'm not gonna go so abstract as lighten. I'm just gonna pick one that's maybe a little less abstract, and maybe the purple's not so great. So soft light, and then I can always move this one back a little bit if I need to with my move tool. So move it back. It was just a little too off because they're blending now. Looks kind of cool though. And maybe this is not the best gradient, but now that you got the clipping mask on it, you can really see it. So notice how I double click right here on the gradient to bring up the editor, and I can just go and totally go to town on this and go, okay, I want purples. Well, maybe, how about this? How about that one in the reds folder? It's just a matter of trying ones that work. So that red one is kind of cool. Maybe I want something in the yellows, or maybe I want to add a yellow because I've got a lot of yellow in these worms. So maybe down in here, I'll add a yellow right there. So I'll click there and onto this stop right here, and I click the color, and I'll bring up the picker. See right here? So I click this stop. If I click it and double click it, it'll bring up the color picker. And now I can add a yellow in there, and I can move this around and decide kind of how that's gonna work, right? It's a radial gradient, so you can kind of play around with how this kind of works here. Check that out. Make the darks. So something like that's kind of nice. You can just mess around with the placement of these things. Right? You can say, I don't want that. I just want the yellow to red. You can add more colors in this. Maybe a little bit of the blue that's in here. So maybe I'll add another stop right there and color pick this blue. Look, when I color pick that, once I have the color picker on, my color pick happens. And I click OK. And then I'm getting a little blue down here. So let me find. So it's really kind of rainbowish, but kind of cool. That looks nice. Okay, I'm gonna go with something like that. So we kind of handmade our gradient there. We got that going. It's a little blurry. That blur is a little much. Maybe I'd want to make another copy of this and not have so much blur. I'm gonna click OK. Maybe it's too much blur on there. My opacity, I could bring my blur opacity down too. But remember, this is blend moding down into this one, so it's really blurry. So maybe that was too much blur. Maybe I want to have one more copy of this. Command J. There we go. Check that out. So making a copy of the one that wasn't blurry and having it on top. It's pretty cool. So I still got the blur here. I got this one. Now I can move this one over a little bit. Let me lock my gradient layer. Move this guy over, and I get almost kind of we worked, on our glitch thing. I can get kind of almost a glitchy thing happening here. It's kind of nice. Just move it over just a tad so they're a little bit off register. It's kind of fun. Makes this cool line that happens right there. Really nice. Digging that. I don't know if I like this worm showing up in his face. So let me see if changing, so you just got to kind of go through your blend modes. That looks cool. Too much. But hey, whatever you turn into me is cool. You know, maybe justify it a little bit. Hue is kind of nice. Saturation's kind of cool. That's going pretty extreme. Let's look down in color. Color's cool. Saturation's cool. What I'm looking at is I'm seeing the edge of this worm here and I'm not loving it. I don't want to have to cut that off. I could erase it or I could mask it out because I don't really want to go in his head. I really like overlay. I think overlay is pretty sweet. The brightness of that is pretty cool. I kind of like multiply too. It gets a little darker there. So it's really up to you on this. Obviously lighten doesn't work. Now, because we're blending 3 of them together now. Okay, darken's kind of cool. Multiply's cool. I kind of like darken. I kind of like overlay. I'm going to go with overlay. I'm going a little bit more extreme here. Now, it's not getting rid of that there, so I am going to definitely lock all these layers so that I don't accidentally paint on the, and I'm going to create a mask on this worm layer right here. I just want to get rid of that part right there because I want it to look like this is behind him still. So I'm going to add a mask to the worm right there, and I'm going to paint with black. I'm going to go to a regular paintbrush. Don't use your worm brush. Go to a regular paintbrush, and you can zoom in, and then just hit that. All right, look at that. Get that out of there. It was too much information going across his face. Everything else looks good. I just didn't want that there. All right, now it looks fine. Feels like it's behind him, so that's pretty sweet. That's nice. Now, one last thing that I do is, you don't have to put text in here, but I think if we're making like a rock poster or something, it's kind of cool if you have text in there. So let's do that final little thing. This is kind of fun. I'm gonna do something probably a little differently than we've done in the past in terms of using text. So let me click the T here, right? And I'm just picking an Arial black, and I'm gonna have white as my text, and I'm going to type out David Bowie, all caps, and then I want to recreate this. Let me get it there. Let me move it on the screen. Oh, I didn't spell that right. Let me double click, get one of those eyes out of there. Nice. So I have it fairly big here, right? I can make them bigger in a minute. Now watch what I do. This is a cool trick. I'm going to rasterize this text. Once you've got the text you like and the color you like, let's rasterize it. Let's go to layer and rasterize type. So now it's an object, right? So here's my cool trick with this. I'm going to go to the magic wand tool. You want to pick the magic wand, and I'm going to zoom into this. I'm going to have each one of these kind of separate. So I'm going to click that. Now there's 2 ways I can go. I can just go to back to my move tool and move this into place. But even better, I can go up to layer, and I could do a new layer via cut. Now that's going to be Shift Command J. So now my D is up on its own layer up here. Look at this. Okay, let's do that to the A. So I'm going to go to my wand tool, W on my keyboard. Got my wand tool. Now I'm going to go up to layer. Layer, and I'm going to go to new layer via cut, Shift Command J. I'm going to do that to the V. So I'm going to Command D, deselect, go back to David Bowie. Right, got to always click back on the David Bowie, and then Shift, right, Command. Here's our keyboard shortcut. So new layer via cut. So it's Command J and add a shift in there. Right, and now we go back to David Bowie on my type and pick the I. You get the hang of it. Let's do that for the rest of them. All right, now that you have those all on their own layers, they can all be moved independently with the move tool, and you can kind of position them where you want to go. So if you have your move tool and you have auto select layer right up here, and you can even show transform controls. So when you click on an object with transform controls on there, you can change the size of things. So if I wanted this D to start back here and also to be smaller a little bit, I could shrink it down a little bit so that it's further away. I could shrink it down. Now I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to mask off the bottom of that in a minute. So that's all good. Now let me move the A into play. So I'm going to click and just kind of move the A and I'm going to follow the space worm around. I'm going to make the A just a teeny bit smaller. So it looks like it's further back in space. Hit return. And then I'm going to go to the V. Leave that maybe the same size. I'm going to put the V maybe over here. Maybe I'll put the V here. Here. All right, nice. So now I want to combine. Okay, I better like where I put these, because now I'm going to merge all those together. So I can just create one mask over everything. So I don't like the B. The B's got to move over just a little bit and up. Okay, so I better like all those. So I'm going to go over here to my layer stack, and I'm going to go and shift click all those. So I start at the top, hold shift down, click all the way down to the E, which is the David Bowie down at the bottom. I'm going to merge all those layers. So I'm going to go to Layer, Merge Layers, or Command E. They're all together now. Okay, so I better like where I've got them. Now I'm going to put a mask on those. Okay, last step here. So I'm going to put the mask on, and you guessed it, with the mask, you're just going to go to your regular paintbrush, and you're going to paint with black in the areas where you want to hide the letters behind objects. We're faking it here. So I want to have a hard round brush. So I'm going to go to the hard round, regular paintbrush. Don't use that worm brush. Regular paintbrush, hard round, zoom way in. That's cool. That's good enough. That gives me some stuff going on there. Very cool. Now, one last thing that you might want to do is maybe you want to make a duplicate of this blur, the light blur that we made originally. So I'll click on that, Command J, put that all the way at the top, right? Take off my transform control on there. It's beginning to bug me now. Put it all the way at the top, and now you can see if that has any cool blend mode effects. Sometimes it's a final touch to kind of tie everything together. Like, oh yeah, overlay, ooh, hard light's kind of cool. Although it kind of knocks out the David Bowie, the words. That's kind of cool. That's pretty sweet. It's just kind of up to you. Hue is nice. I kind of like hue. I'm gonna go with that, see what it looks like. So there's on, there's off. Well, with the hue though, I lose the blue and I lose this right here. So I don't know if I dig that. Let's see. Saturation, I don't think that's doing much. That's not changing much. So saturation, color. So I don't want to lose that cool blue color down at the bottom of that worm up there. So I got to make sure that, I mean, the only thing I could use, I guess, is lighten or screen and then bring the opacity down even more. Just a slight change. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Lightens everything up a little bit, but you decide. You don't have to put it on there. Might look good just like this, but I kind of dig it. Kind of looks nice, and you can move it if you want to. Remember, lock your other layers just in case, so you're not moving those around on accident. And I could click this and move it. Oh, see, it wanted to move. I could even turn it. I can rotate it. Completely flip it the other way, so it's different colors reacting in different parts. I could even mask off if I only want it like on his face, right, like that. I could put a mask on it and mask off so that I could go to a different, let's say I really like what's happening with one of these down here. Let's say I really like what's happening with Divide. It looks pretty sweet. I think I used that on my other poster. But but Divide actually looks really great. So maybe I like that, but I can always mask off on there. So if I don't want it to be on a worm, right, I can do that. I can mask it off and paint with black with my regular paintbrush and just, get a big soft brush or a hard brush or whatever and just mask that out so it's not there. So that's up to you, but Divide was pretty cool on the top of that. So there's before and there's after. It kind of brightened up over here too, which is kind of nice. All right, so that is our demo on gradient brushes, making space worms, and doing a poster to boot. Hope this was a helpful tutorial, and have fun with this. You can do a second one and not do David Bowie, do somebody that you want to do. I picked David Bowie because, he has a lot of space references in his music. Some of you may know David Bowie's music from way back when. I mean, he was, he had a song called Space Oddity, so it kind of made sense to me to have these space worms and David Bowie to go together, but you can pick whoever you want. Do a demo for me, upload that. I really want to show these off, so maybe do your favorite music person and do the space worms with them. All right, this has been another Curtis Stage tutorial, and we'll talk to you soon.